I typically oppose Ben Shapiro's views because he is a far right-winger that talks really fast, and because he talks really fast, he gains this right-wing base that just blindly accepts everything he has to say without actually engaging in any of the substance. And I would argue that at least 90% of the content that comes out of Ben Shapiro's mouth is absolute garbage. But that is with exception to a very few positions that he holds. And one of them I want to actually share with you today. This is something that Democrats are typically split over, and it has to do with regulating hate speech. I oppose regulating hate speech. I do not think that the government should be able to say that you can't say things because they are hateful or hurtful. I do think that the government should prevent people from saying things that are threatening in nature or potentially physically damaging or that are dangerous to say. But when you say something that is just hurtful or hateful, I don't think that should be suppressed by the government in any way. And so I am very libertarian in that sense. That is something that a lot of Democrats are iffy on. Now, I want to share exactly why Democrats are iffy on this issue. But first, I want to show you what Ben Shapiro has to say, because I think he does a really good job at capturing why his position is so appealing. Take a look.
So in terms of hate speech, whether it's for, against, whatever, whether it's from a politician, a student, a protester, somebody who's working in a company, what do you think, where's the line between what the government or a private industry should and should not censor, and what should and should not be prosecuted by the law, especially with what seems like a increase and resurgence in anti-Semitism and white supremacy, or just any sort of racial tensions that are going on right now?
I mean, to my own detriment, I'm going to say that nearly nothing should be regulated. The only things that should be regulated or censored are legitimate threats of violence and libelous material. And people here always say fire in a crowded theater. That's because they don't understand the Schenck ruling, which was largely overruled by the Supreme Court later. That is not a broad ruling. It was never meant to be a broad ruling, and its use at the time was justified used by Woodrow Wilson as justification to arrest political opponents. So I'd much rather have, I'm more willing to have a free and open political sphere, even if there are more crazies out there, than to have the government sit over all of us and determine what is acceptable speech and what is not acceptable speech. And I've been the target of more unacceptable speech, in my view, than most everyone that I know. And yet I have consistently stood for the proposition that people who have specifically targeted me ought not be even deplatformed, forget about prosecuted, but even deplatformed, unless they are making openly violent threats against me and are threatening my family's safety. Other than, everybody knows I'm not a Milo Yiannopoulos fan. When he was thrown off Twitter, I said that was wrong. I'm not an Alex Jones fan. I think he's a joke and a bad person to boot. Anybody who does what he has done with Sandy Hook is not my cup of tea. Also, they're turning the frogs gay. But when Alex Jones was banned from Twitter and Facebook, unless they actually had a legal excuse to do so, I don't see how you can do that and call yourself a free speech platform in any way. Now, are there market ramifications to saying things? Sure. There are, of course, social and market ramifications to saying things, and it is not up to me to have to publish any of these people I disagree with. I don't have to do that. I don't have to reward their business. I don't have to do any of those things. But for the social media platforms to determine that they're no longer platforms, as I said earlier, but actual publishers, changes the nature of their role. If they want to be honest about that, then join the club. But if not...
So he's pretty much right on the nose about this issue. And I know a lot of my viewers are going to oppose what I have to say here, but here's the thing. It's really easy to fall into the trap that, you shouldn't be allowed to go up to a black person and just call them an F and N word. Right? Like, it's so easy to think that that should be illegal. But the problem is, once you start saying that hate speech should be regulated, that it should be illegal to say hateful things, then this begs the question, who gets to decide what is hateful? And that could lead easily to dictatorships or just straight up monarchies, or totalitarianism, because people can start saying, well, you can't say that because it hurts my feelings. Well, you can't say Donald Trump is a bad president because that's hate speech. Yeah, that's a dangerous thing. And so whenever you try to create laws around hate speech, you lack in principle. And so you create this fuzzy gray area that could easily lead to huge systemic problems like dictatorships and totalitarianism. And so I completely agree with Ben Shapiro on this one. I think he's absolutely right. And I think that Democrats who think that hate speech should be illegal, I don't think they're principled. There aren't a lot of progressives that stand with me on this issue. I think Kyle Klinsky does. I believe the Humanist Report probably would as well. I can never remember that guy's name ever, but I think Anna Kasparian probably would too. I don't know about. I think Cenk Uygur would probably too, but there aren't a lot of people that think that hate speech should be legalized. So that's my position. I do want to add to Ben Shapiro's list of things that should be illegal. So, for example, obviously, when you have evidence to suggest that there is a news media outlet that is publishing false stories while misquoting, while knowing the truth, while having evidence that they're actually misquoting, I think that should be illegal. So typical libel laws. I don't think that you should be able to be allowed to say threats. But I think Ben Shapiro did get something wrong. He said, I do think it's okay for people to shout fire in a movie theater. I think it's okay to have some crazies. But you can actually argue, you can make a decent argument that if you say fire in a movie theater and you shout fire, you're causing danger to people. You are threatening people that way because that can cause stampedes. That could really mess up people's days in a way that like physically speaking, because they become, they get this anxiety that is incredibly dangerous to people. People can get panic attacks over that stuff. And so in my view, that is a threat. And so I don't think Ben Shapiro is, because he is principled in the sense that he opposes making hate speech illegal, he thinks that, well, I'm going to have to allow these crazies to say things. I don't think that's the case. I can't think of a single scenario where you can say, that sounds like it should be illegal, but it shouldn't. And yes, that means that people could go up to police officers and say, F you, you effing N-word, right? And you can say all sorts of things you want to police officers, but you should not be arrested for any reason for doing that. And that sounds absolutely crazy, but I would much rather, in this sense of what Ben Shapiro is saying, I would much rather have that than have the government decide what is and is not hateful. So that's my position on that. I want to hear your guys' views. Democrats are split on this issue, so I'm probably going to get a really bad like to dislike ratio, but we'll see.